Well, we've got some pretty strikingly crazy big news that, of course, happened right after I did my podcast today. There's a big shakeup at Xbox. I would argue that this is probably the biggest news, especially because of the depth of it, uh, since I've covered games. Definitely for Xbox fans, but I honestly think for gaming in general, I think the implications are going to be far reaching. And for better or worse, I think this is going to be a pretty big story and is likely going to be a turning point in video games, one way or the other. Let's get into it. Okay, so we're going to kick it off with this. The first exclusive reporting on this was from IGN. As far as I can tell, the headline kind of says it all. Phil Spencer is retiring. Sarah Bond is out. Matt Booty is promoted as Microsoft AI exec. Asha Sharma is named the new Xbox boss. And it notes here in the subtitle, Spencer's run with Xbox ends just months shy of the brand's 25th anniversary. I believe that was going to be in November, or it still will, but it was going to be as well. So just my first reactions here to all of this is not surprised that Phil is retiring. Kind of expected it like next year, not quite yet. Sarah Bond out makes more sense the more I've thought about it. But at the time, when this was first announced, it was like, we kind of all assumed she was next, and apparently not. Matt Booty promoted, and we'll talk about that in a moment. That's if you're looking for continuity, that's where you're gonna get it. And then Asha Sharma being promoted to Phil Spencer's job. Not someone we probably expected. I think many of us would have assumed it was going to be a Sarah Bond or a Matt Booty or someone that we had heard of before and not one of the AI execs. So we'll hit up some of the other things I have posted here. This video could be an hour. I have no idea. Consider this like an extra podcast just without the graphics, I guess. So this was reported by Ryan McCaffrey. Anyone could have done this because it's just copy and pasting things that happened. So the way this article breaks down is it goes into the statements of like Phil Spencer and Asha Sharma and I think Satya Nadella and stuff like that. Look, like just to throw it out there, again, it's not that surprising that Phil's leaving. It's surprising he's doing it now. If you read through the letter he wrote and some of the statements that we've seen, he approached them last year about doing this, which is funny because last summer there were rumors that he was considering retiring. And again, like that shouldn't be surprising. Of all the things that happened in this situation, Phil leaving shouldn't be surprising. For various reasons. One, he's been at Microsoft for 38 years. He started off as an intern. Pretty cool success story. He's been the head of Xbox for 12 years, I believe. And the one thing I would say is that if you want to take emotion out of this, because I think Phil seems like a cool dude. He seems like a gamer, so I always appreciated that his perspective should have been pretty good with this stuff. It doesn't mean he always made the right decisions or even could make the decisions, but I think if you look at it from purely a mechanical point of view, it isn't surprising that the platform that is often considered the third place platform is replacing the head of their department or their division after 12 years of not changing that position and really making no efforts to do it in a lot of big ways, right? Consider PlayStation and Nintendo's success during the same time frame, and they've each had 2 or 3 different sets of executives leading those teams. And I think Xbox is a little different. I feel like they've always been a little more community oriented. Phil, obviously, especially because he is a gamer and was always very open with fans, it felt a little different. And so, where Nintendo and PlayStation could kind of roll through executives and it'd be like, oh, there's a new head of Nintendo, which there is right now. Doug Bowser, who's only been doing it for a few years, it has retired or is retiring, and someone else is taking over. Like, so they're on their, third or fourth set of executives since Phil's been with Xbox, and even PlayStation in the last couple of years has done the same thing and did it years ago as well. So I think if you look at this purely mechanically, it's not really that crazy. I just think that Phil is such a figurehead in the games industry, not just with Xbox, that it's weird to think that he's essentially gone. Let's get into the rest of this here. So yeah, so this part of the article is where he talked about where last fall he talked to the Microsoft CEO about starting to step back. They talked here about this Asha being promoted. She's interesting. If you look at her profile, her LinkedIn, essentially she started with Microsoft back in 2010 or 11 in the marketing department, was there a couple of years. And then she's just kind of climbed the corporate ladder and she's worked for Meta, which is the closest she's come to this job from what I can see. She worked for like Instacart. She worked at, various companies, being on boards and being the COO for a couple, chief operating officer for a couple big companies. And then she came back to Microsoft and has been the head of one of their AI initiatives. Now, what I will say, because that's instantly going to throw people off, from what I can tell, she doesn't seem all that super invested into AI. I suspect that there was just an opening and she took it and she ran with it. And that's kind of what's happening here, because she also doesn't really seem, from what I can find, and maybe she'll prove otherwise, to be like a big gamer or super into that ecosystem or into that thing. Now, the first reaction, especially going from Phil to someone like this, is going to be, oh, if she's not a gamer, she can't do it. Like, are you telling me you think Doug Bowser sits around and plays video games? Are you telling me Herman Holst or whoever's the head of PlayStation right now, like, goes home and plays some Call of Duty? Like, probably doesn't, right? Phil was kind of a unique guy in this case. And I think we have to kind of understand at some point that in the corporate world, a lot of times, the CEOs, the people who run these companies, often don't do it nearly as long as Phil did, and often have nothing to do with that industry or kind of don't care about it. They know the nuts and bolts. They understand how it works from a business perspective. And they kind of just do what the board tells them to do, which is kind of how we'll see how this plays out with her and the people above her. But I think this notion that, you have to be a hardcore gamer to be the head of a game company, that's just not how it works. And it's not how the other platforms do it. Those people, they may have more extensive histories with the company they're running, but they're rarely that way. Even my own experience in the last year, we got a new, our old CEO had been there for the whole time I've worked there for like 20 plus years. He pretty suddenly announced he was leaving. They were replacing him with someone who had never been a CEO before and was only like slightly adjacent to our industry. They came in, he kind of guided her for a few months, and then he effed off to retirement. And she's been doing a really good job because she's treating people well. She's making good decisions for the company that kind of don't matter what we do. Because at that level, the people under her are the ones who manage the day-to-day processes and stuff like that. That is going to be the situation as well. So someone in this position, it's almost better for them to be good at running things than necessarily really caring that much about the specific things that they're running. But that's just my take on it. So this is where Phil talks about how he's going to stay on for a while to help her transition in. He talks about how she's a former VP of product engineering at Meta, so she has some technical stuff there. Instacart COO. She was also on the board at Home Depot. What was interesting was, let me see if I can find it here. She really went hard in her whole statement of like, we're bringing Xbox back. The games are the focus. We're not, going to be milking any franchises and stuff like that, even though they're still going to release Call of Duty every year. But, the words were good. And they especially were good here, where she said, Third, she had multiple points. I do suggest reading her email if you want to find it and go through it. Third, future of play. We are witnessing a reinvention of play. To meet the moment, we will invent new business models and new ways to play, including leaning into what we already have, iconic teams, characters, and worlds that people love. But we will not treat those worlds as static IP to milk and monetize. We will be a shared platform and tools to empower developers and players to create and share their own stories. And then as monetization and AI evolve and influence the future, we will not chase short-term efficiency or flood our ecosystem with soulless AI slop. Note that. Games are and always will be crafted by humans and created with the most innovative technology provided by us. If you haven't been paying attention, her mentioning AI slop in this is really interesting because this is her first like statement to the company, her statement to the teams under her. So this was absolutely vetted by like her superiors and lawyers and all that. Just a couple of weeks ago, the head of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, came out and like was complaining about people using that phrase of that, oh, people shouldn't say AI slop and it's derogatory to, you know, the things that we're doing and all that, which is why you may have seen a bunch of people calling Microsoft Microslop lately. That's spurred directly by that. So maybe this was just a clever way of them like letting her be like cool, you know, to kind of look like she's pushing back on the man or whatever. I don't know. I think it was smart. I think it was a good thing to include that because a lot of people who are paying, you know, a lot of attention, who are hyper fixated on the games industry and Xbox and all this stuff are going to see that and say, hey, if she was, if they had her say that, you know, it's still cool. But if that was something she felt like she needed to put out there, especially coming from an AI department in Microsoft, I think everyone saw that as immediately a scary thing. And it could be, let me be clear. Maybe she's seen what they're doing over there and I was like, oh, I don't like what they're doing. And now she's bringing that experience to Microsoft and she's able to say like, yeah, that's not what we're going to do here with games. Games have to be made by people. Like she said here, they are art. They're crafted by humans. Like it's great lip service. Right. And in the rest of her letter, which you can go find and we'll look at it briefly, she says literally all the right things. Honestly, she does. Now, you can say whatever you want. Now there's got to be action. There's got to be follow through. Actions are always going to speak louder than words, of course, right? And now it's going to be time to see over the next year. And if it doesn't happen next year, does the new console come out? Because that's going to be one of the biggest signs of them still being dedicated to the Xbox brand. If they're willing to release another console that likely won't even sell as many as the last one did, the current series consoles, you know, they're probably looking at a 10 to 15 million, maybe 20 million units sold at best, because that's not really what they're pushing anymore, which is fine. But that's going to be a sign of dedication. Are we going to keep seeing studios like Compulsion? Are we going to see Undead Labs with State of Decay 3, Ninja Theory with their various projects, whoever else? Of course, I can't think of it right now. Double Fine with all their weird stuff. Are they going to keep doing that stuff, or are they going to pivot, or are they going to be gone? You know, that's the thing to look. Activision, they're going to be around. Halo Studios, they're going to be around. You know, the Bethesda, they're going to be around, right? Like those are the people who are going to be making the things that are going to push the brand forward one way or the other. How dedicated she truly is and her and Xbox under her are, it's going to be very indicative of how those smaller teams are treated, or if they're allowed to continue to exist, as we've seen on the other platform, that's not been as encouraged. Then we had things here from Matt Booty. You know, he just kind of basically says what you would expect. He got promoted to the head of game content or something like that, and you know, said all the same. Oh, I met with her. She's great. Blah blah blah. It's interesting. I still think the timing is strange. You know, in November, it'll be the 25th anniversary from the first Xbox. That was a moment where a lot of people kind of expected Phil was going to be the head of that, and Sarah Bond. I can see maybe the logic of if they're going to introduce a new direction and new people, new faces, you do it and they get to be the ones who do that. I hope that assuming they do some kind of showcase or some kind of celebration of the brand, man, you got like Phil's got to be back, right? Like you got to bring him out, and maybe even some of the old people who have been in the brand, even though a lot of them kind of ruined the brand, but that's a whole different story. So, okay. And then over here on this Windows Central article, we have here where Matt Booty promoted to, I think it's executive vice president and chief content office. Again, if people are looking for some continuity, he's the one who's going to do it, who's going to show it. It's, you know, I still am kind of surprised he's not the one who got put up, but he isn't, and that's how it is. And it has Phil Spencer retires here. The Sarah Bond part is interesting. At the very end, I'll show the whole narrative today after this was announced was that, you know, her letter, she had no letter, she had no commentary after this announcement. She finally did here a few hours later. I don't know that really clears much up, but it is still worth, you know, paying attention to that. Her letter, you know, wasn't included in some of these other places where other ones were. I'll talk about her at the end and kind of how I feel about that whole situation. I will wrap it up here with the end of this article where it says the appointment of Sharma, the elevation of Booty, and the retirement of Spencer collectively mark a generational shift for Xbox. The division enters its next chapter with new leadership, a massive content empire, and a mandate to integrate AI more deeply into the gaming experience. For Spencer, the legacy is unmistakable. He rebuilt Xbox's culture, expanded its reach, and helped redefine what a gaming platform could be. I'll be cheering you on in this next chapter as Xbox's proudest fan and player, Phil Spencer wrote. So here we had Phil's statement that he posted on Twitter. I'm not going to read the whole thing. You can do it yourself. But basically he calls out Asha and congratulates her. Thanks everybody. He started as an intern in 1988. Mind you, that was the year I was born. and I'm obviously not young. So that's definitely pretty interesting. And it's him just kind of basically saying thank you and all that. With Aaron Greenberg on here, he posted thanking Phil, and then here talking about Asha, he says, I'm excited by what's ahead. I will share that after spending dedicated time this week with our new gaming CEO, Asha Shar. I'm incredibly optimistic about the opportunity ahead under her leadership. Asha is exceptionally bright, eager to listen and learn from others, no ego, but wants to get Xbox and gaming in a direction I'm personally incredibly inspired by. A brave bias for action that starts with great games, the return to Xbox, starting with the console and the vision of the future, paired with Matt Booty and his expanded role leading all of our creative games and entertainment teams. We are positioned to do the work we need to do as a long-time team member and as someone who cares deeply about Xbox, our games, players, and the future. I'm encouraged and eager to help us on the path ahead. This was a quote of her. We'll look at that here in a second. You know, Greenberg's been there forever. I don't know if he's always the best messenger for stuff, but you know, he is who he is, and I at least appreciate his, you know, love for the brand and all that. This is kind of the standard thing you would kind of expect. I did appreciate this where she posted, and let's see, she had like 1,000 followers earlier today. She's gotten a few more, and that will probably get exceptionally larger. But I kind of appreciate this really basic post she made of, today I begin my role as CEO of Xbox. Here are my 3 commitments: great games, return of Xbox, and future of play. And then she has a blog. We'll look at that here in a moment. Kind of, you know, pretty basic. And we'll look at the blog that she posted and some of the things that she said in there, including what I talked about before with AI. But like I said before, you know, just because she doesn't go home and play COD every night doesn't mean that she can't do this job. And there is an argument, I think, to be made to say that maybe the idea of someone who's maybe outside of the industry, who isn't a gamer, may be able to make some clearer decisions and some, you know, and be able to look at the industry and things in a way that maybe isn't defined by fandom and things like that. And I'm just saying, it can be a good thing if you're looking for the glass half full, if you're looking for the optimistic point of view on this, you know, that's that. So here we have the actual official blog from Microsoft introducing her. So Sutton and Adela, what he says kind of doesn't matter at this point. Phil Spencer, we already saw that. It's essentially what he had tweeted out. Her statement here, Asha Sharma here is the interesting. So, says, "Dear team, today I begin my role as Xbox CEO of Microsoft Gaming." And I saw some people freaking out about Microsoft Gaming. That's what Phil Spencer was too. Obviously we associate him with Xbox, but the actual division is called Microsoft Gaming. At first I was like, oh no, are they changing it to that? And we're going to see a whole shift of Xbox to this new branding. Maybe one day, I have no idea, but at least for now, that's what it's always been, or at least for a long time. I feel two things at once: humility and urgency. Humility, because the team has built something extraordinary over the decades. Urgency, because gaming is in a period of rapid change and we need to move with clarity and conviction. I am stepping into work shaped by generations of artists, engineers, designers, writers, musicians, operators, and more who create worlds that have brought joy and deep personal meaning to hundreds of millions of players. The level of craft here is exceptional and is amplified by Xbox, which is founded in the belief that the power of games connects all people and pushes the industry forward. I'm going to read this whole thing in case you don't want to have to. If you want to skip this, feel free. Thank you to Phil for his leadership into every studio, platform, and operations team that has built this foundation. We are stewards of some of the most loved stories and characters in entertainment and bring players and creators together around the fun and community of gaming in entirely new ways. My first job is simple: understand what makes this work and protect it. That starts with 3 commitments. First, great games. This is from her Twitter post. Everything begins here. We must have great games beloved by players before we do anything. Unforgettable characters, stories that make us feel, innovative gameplay, and creative excellence. We will empower our studios, invest in iconic franchises, and back bold new ideas. We will take risks. We will enter new categories and markets where we can add real value, grounded in what players care about most. I promoted Matt Booty in honor of this commitment. He understands the craft and the challenges of building great games and has led teams that deliver award-winning work and has earned the trust of game developers across the industry, which is true. He's been a pretty big part of a bunch of big initiatives. Second, the return of Xbox. So to explain this one a bit, we will commit to our core Xbox fans and players, those who have invested with us for the past 25 years, and to the developers who build the expansive universes and the experiences that are embraced by players across the world. We will celebrate our roots with a renewed commitment to Xbox, starting with console, which has shaped who we are. It connects us to the players and fans who invest in Xbox and to the developers who build ambitious experiences for it. Gaming now lives across devices, not within the limits of a single piece of hardware. As we expand across the PC, mobile, and cloud, Xbox should feel seamless, instant, and worthy of the communities we serve. We will break down the barriers so developers can build once and reach players everywhere without compromise. Third, future of play. We're witnessing reinvention of play to meet the moment. I actually just read this, so I'm not going to read it again. Talking about no AI slop and crafted by artists and blah, blah, blah. And then finally, the next 25 years belong to the teams who dare to build something surprising, something no one else is willing to try, and have the patience to see it through. We have done this before, and I'm here to help us do it again. I want to return to the renegade spirit that built Xbox in the first place. It will require us to relentlessly question everything, revisit processes, protect what works, and be brave be brave enough to challenge what does not. Thank you for welcoming me to this jersey. So there's the big thing. The great games. I think they're already kind of doing this. If we're going to be honest, I think they're actually doing a really good job with games right now. But promoting Matt Booty and keeping him around is definitely a good thing. I really felt like this return of Xbox is interesting. Now, let's be completely clear, because she's kind of new to this whole thing. She's probably not a super deep and curious gamer and all that. This part of the statement is almost certainly from talking to Matt Booty, Spencer, Greenberg, all these people around her. And surely Xbox and Microsoft have seen a lot of the reactions to the multi-platform push and the lack of exclusivity and even, the low console sales and stuff like that. This seems like a direct answer to that from all of those people combined, including her. There's multiple mentions here. Well, they still acknowledge that they are trying to do a multi-platform thing and trying to do that whole initiative. There's repeated references here directly to the Xbox fans and players, the dedicated people, and making them feel valued and things like that. And it literally says, with a renewed commitment to Xbox, starting with console. I mean, that's if we're going to be straight up, that's the most direct we still care about our console statement. I think we've seen from Xbox like since the series consoles came out. So if you want to get some hopium puffing, if you want to get some copium on the stick, if you want some silver lining here, the AI thing is nice, and hopefully they follow through there. But this too, like I feel like this is one of the first time in a long time we've seen someone this high up in Xbox seem this committed to the console still. So take that for what it is. And then here we had a few hours later on LinkedIn, Sarah Bond posted. I'm going to be honest, I read through it. It doesn't really say a whole lot. She's just basically talking about her journey at Xbox, talking about how she's decided to move on, personally and professionally, taking the next step, thanking Phil for all of his mentorship, and then basically saying at the end, did I bring my best? Did I help someone else succeed? Did I do my best work? And saying she hopes that those things are all true. You know, maybe there's some bad blood here. Maybe I think people have been too quick to assume that, especially in this current climate, that Sarah Bond wanted this job. Like, there's a really good chance that she saw what Phil's gone through over the last, especially 15 years or so, and even the time that she's been there, and maybe just saw that and said, man, I don't know if that's what I want to do. Because I'm gonna be honest, like, I've seen, like, she definitely, when she would talk about Xbox and was on interviews and stuff like that, she definitely seemed to care about like parts of the Xbox, like, kind of thing. She talked a lot about family and like protecting kids, and she seemed really invested in that. And I could be wrong. I have no idea. Something tells me Sarah Bond isn't going home and playing Call of Duty or jumping on the sticks or probably playing games at all. She knows more about Xbox than I could ever imagine, right? And I don't doubt that at all. But that doesn't necessarily mean, I think that there was just this assumption that she was the heir apparent to Phil. And I've even seen some other people make like statements about like, hey, like, she got hired by Phil. She was under Phil for all these years. There's a decent chance that, now that he's leaving, she kind of doesn't want to still be there. She maybe wants to go pave her own path in another industry or another company or something like that. So I've seen a lot of assumptions that her not being there anymore and leaving when Phil leaves is this like huge statement, and that it's this like crazy thing, when really it just may be that maybe she just doesn't want to be the head of Xbox. Like, that's very possible. I don't, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we'll get an expose from Jason Schreier here in a few months where Sarah Bond is just so mad that, something happened. She didn't like the way it was going down and she left in protest. And maybe this was a big dramatic thing. I have no idea. We're 30 minutes in here or so I won't drone on too much longer. Look, like, this probably isn't great, right? Anytime you have big leadership changes like this, it doesn't have to be a bad thing. Like I said, the other platforms have done it. It's not like Xbox is in a bad position right now, no matter what people try to tell you who are trying to get clicks on social media. They're making a ton of money on games. Their console sales are down, but they still sold a lot of consoles, even though it's not as many as the other ones. It's still good. Like 40 million, 35 million consoles sold is still very good. It's a healthy player base. And considering how much, crossover they have with like cloud and PC and all that, their Xbox, if they were in a really tough spot, this would be scarier. I do think it's weird that they're bringing in someone who's kind of like foreign to this industry, but that doesn't, like I said before, I don't think that's always a bad thing. It's different perspectives. She's fairly young, it seems like, that we have a little more flexibility maybe, in that way. I don't think that has to be a bad thing. And even though I'm sure it's all PR approved and marketing approved, she said the right thing so far. Actions obviously mean a lot more than words, so we're going to have to see what actually happens over the next few years. There's also a really good chance she's here for like 2 or 3 years and bounces, because that's the more normal thing, and that's the more normal way these things work. So I really think this is a chance for Xbox to kind of reset the narrative a little bit. I like Phil Spencer a lot. He seems like a really nice guy. He seems pretty genuine. Sarah Bond, a similar thing. I think there's also a decent number of people who kind of blame them for a lot of the current narrative and a lot of the kind of just feels around the brand right now. And I don't think everyone really believed that maybe that was the best thing going forward, is to stick with, what kind of hasn't worked for a long time, even though they have brought the brand so far, right? So I think you can go into this being like, this doesn't have to be a bad thing. It's just different and new, and that's always scary. Humans don't like change, and that's where I kind of feel like a lot of this anxiety is coming from. Um, yeah, I just, for me, I think it's going to be, at the end of the day, it's just games. And at the very least, it's going to be an interesting thing to follow over the next couple of years. It's going to be interesting to see how they treat the rest of this year, being the big 25th anniversary selection, even though like some of the big players aren't still going to be around, which is definitely strange. Like the showcase this summer is going to be weird because it's probably going to be her speaking during it. It's probably going to be her first big like reveal. I certainly hope they do some kind of interview or have her on, like they have that weekly Xbox podcast. It'd be pretty cool for them to have her on that and let her talk like a human in a fairly regulated but still normal situation. I'll be looking out for stuff like that. So I don't know, man. Let me know in the comments what you think of all this. I think we'll look back at this one day as probably one of the biggest stories easily of this generation and like in gaming history, probably, because one way or the other, it's probably a fork in the road. We will see which path things go down, and for better or worse. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments of what's going on. If you want more Xbox news and gaming news in general, please consider subscribing to the channel. Hit the like, hit the thumbs up so more people see the video. If you really want to support what I'm doing here, consider becoming a YouTube member. It's just a couple bucks a month. You get videos like this one a bit early, and as well as a few other perks. If you want to see all the other content I'm making, if you want to see other ways to support, like buying merch or donating to my yearly charity I'm doing, look at the links down in the description of the video. That's all I've got for this one. So until next time.